with no Christian background at all. Most of them do. And it's a pleasure to be able to expose them to that Christian family. Not only does it help them, but it helps our students as well as they witness. So thank you very much. Oh, one more, Dave, yes.
Just for everybody's sake, what is the trend right now as far as from year to year for the number of students we have in our colony?
Sure. If we go back 13 years, we were losing 110 students a year, and up to 5 years ago. For the last 5 years, we have gained right at 6 students a year. So we're not breaking any records, but we've stopped the bleeding, and we're heading up in the right direction. So that is good. Our church here, most of them have some more space to grow in those areas, and I believe as the end time events become more clear, that the latter rain comes, we are in a unique position to grow quickly as a church. I believe that's true. So, oh, good. You guys have asked the most questions. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm.
Even with the financial help.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something?
It's amazing the miracles that have happened in the last few years right directly in that area. We've had church members step up like we've never seen in the history of our conference. Right now, we're able to offer scholarships for incoming students, kindergarten, first grade, or ninth grade. And this year, we were able to fund up to 40% of any student. But it makes a commitment, takes a commitment from all of us, because these are our kids. So the churches participate, the schools participate, because the needs, you're exactly right. The needs are increasing. They really are. That in part of his presentation. How can we, yeah, so that's a really good question. Yes, Tom? 60% of our Adventist families are either A, attending an Adventist school or being homeschooled. We claim our homeschoolers as Adventist education as well. There's about 8%. And we wish we could provide more resources even in that area. A lot of our schools open up part of their program, part of their days, and they say if you want to come in and join us for band or join us for field trips or those kind of things. So we try to be inclusive, because a lot of those homeschoolers will eventually join at some point into our schools. So thank you for that. It's very real. Yes? Mm. Mm.
One of our kiddos in our home church is on a fast track to become a part of that.
Mm.
And because of that, he has chosen to stay in the public school system because of the opportunity and the scholarship and the music teacher's training that is directly connected with the Youth Philharmonic. That PAA has a very good music teacher and would be happy to have
good for you.
him on board, but he's still not budging. What can you do to help me encourage this kid that is going to be a part someday of that orchestra to be able to still experience a Christian education?
That's perfect. Let's work together and let's take him over to PA and show him what they have to offer. That's perfect. Let's do it together. Yes. Any other questions? Thank you for believing in the young people of our church. Thank you for believing in the young people of our community as well.
Thank you, Gail. Really appreciate that. Let's give Gail a hand. Thank you for the incredible ministry that you lead with Adventist education. And before I move on, I just want to thank Brian again. Thank you for sharing, Brian. Really appreciate your leadership in finance. And Chief Dave Allen, and those of you who know him well know why I use that title. but Chief Dave Allen, who came to us 16 years ago from South Africa, who had been a conference president and president of Helderberg College, and then came here to this Sunnyside church and was youth pastor, as associate pastor, who just loved on the members of this church and loved his way into the hearts of the members of this church, and then became the senior pastor, the lead pastor of this church, only to be stolen by the big, bad, horrible, terrible, dark conference to be the vice president for administration about 9 years ago. And we are so grateful that Dave has served in that capacity these past 9 years. It has been my special blessing to be able to serve with Dave the last 4.5 years and the last year and a half as president alongside him. And he has just been an incredible blessing to our office team, to our administration, to this will be news to you. Dave, it was announced, is retiring as of July 1. And I've tried to tell him that retirement is not biblical. You can't find it anywhere in Scripture, but that's okay. We love you, Dave, and we will miss you. And thank you. Let's give Dave a hand. Thank you so much for your incredible service to the Oregon Conference. Really appreciate it. And we are going to miss you in that capacity, but we know you're going to be around and continuing to use your gifts in service to God. I want to just begin by sharing our, just a quick review of our mission this evening. Our mission begins with the statement that it's all about Jesus. It really is all about Jesus. In fact, Jesus said when the Pharisees came to him and they were accusing him and wanting to get rid of him, he said, "You study the Scriptures, and the Scriptures testify of what? Of me." In other words, the Bible is all about me. All of Scripture is about Jesus and his relationship to us. We're told in Scripture that Jesus is the one who creates the world. We're told in Scripture Jesus is the one who dies for us, and that God gives it to Jesus to judge, and that God has Jesus as our advocate. Sounds like a pretty good deal for us. It's all about Jesus. And who is preparing a place for us right now? Jesus. And who is coming back for us? Jesus. It's all about Jesus. The Sabbath is about spending time with our Creator. And who is our Creator? Jesus, the Bible says. It's all about Jesus. Every belief we have, every practice that we have as Seventh-day Adventists is about Jesus. Every prophecy points us forward to what Jesus wants to do for us as his people. And so that is our focus, the centrality of Jesus and what he has done for us on the cross, in particular, to secure an eternity with him again. It's all about knowing Jesus. But not just knowing Jesus, and this is not just knowing about Jesus, this is also knowing him personally, developing a relationship with him. But in knowing Jesus, because he has created all of us, we can't help but want to know others as well. And so it's knowing Jesus and others intimately. There's a quality there. Connecting in authentic relationship. Because when you know somebody, then you have an authentic relationship with them. It's no longer just, "Oh, hi, how you doing? Good to see you again." We actually end up with an authentic relationship. And so it's knowing Jesus and others intimately, connecting in authentic relationship, what leads us into really loving each other. Until I know you, I can't really love you for who you are. I love you because you're another person. I love you out of principle. I may love my idea about you, but to really love you as you are starts with the knowing. But once I know you, I can really love you because I see what God has done in your life, and I see how he has created you to be. And so I love you. And the same is true for Jesus. Loving Jesus and others passionately, connecting in transformational community. When we grow to love Jesus, it begins to transform our lives. When we grow to love each other and others in our community, it begins to be transformational in our churches and in our community. Which leads us to serving, because you can't know and love somebody without wanting to serve them. And so when it comes to Jesus, when we know him and we love him, we will want to serve him, won't we? And if we try to jump to serving him without knowing and loving him, what happens? Then I'm just wanting to feel good about doing something. Pat myself on the back, as it were. But when I do it because I know him and I love him, then it's all about him, and it's not about me. And the same is true with others. And so serving Jesus and others is something that happens actively, responding to Jesus' call and people's needs. It's all about Jesus, and it's all about others. The golden rule. And then finally, the great commandment, And then finally, that leads to sharing Jesus. We can't know Jesus, love Jesus, and serve Jesus and not want to share Jesus. Isn't that true? When you get the very best news possible, can't you just hardly wait to share it with somebody? When you get to spend time with somebody you really, really enjoy and love spending time with, isn't it fun to be able to tell others about the fact that you were able to spend time with this person? And the same is true with Jesus, enthusiastically connecting others in relationship with Jesus. And once we do that, what happens is this. When we share Jesus, what happens? They begin to know him. They come to love him. They serve him. They share him. The person they share him with knows him, loves him, serves him, and shares him. And they know him and love him and serve him and share him. And you can see the arrows going around and around, and it just expands and expands. And this is how the kingdom of God expands in our lives and in our church. This is God's plan for his church. It's his plan from the very beginning of the New Testament movement of Christianity. And so this leads to some real vision initiatives that we have for this 5-year term, which we are almost 1 year into. And the first initiative is better knowing, loving, and engaging all generations and people groups. We realized that we needed to focus on young adults. We needed to give special focus to young adults. But as we began to give special focus to young adults, we realized, there's a whole diversity in our church that we probably need to expand to giving focus to better knowing and loving and serving together and engaging. One of the areas of our conference is about 30 of our congregations are Hispanic congregations. And we have a wonderful, dynamic, vibrant, growing Hispanic ministry in our conference. Do you realize that one of the things that they're doing together is they realized how difficult it was to do ministry out of rented facilities, and they were struggling to make that work. And so they began to bind together among different churches, and they would share resources until one congregation could purchase a building, a church building. And then they would move on to the next congregation, and they would raise funds as a whole community until a Spanish community until they could buy another facility. And we have a number of facilities now that have been purchased as a result of them sharing together and helping each other. Well, I think we can learn from that in a number of other ways, that there is synergy in collaboration. Gail was talking about Together as One. Together as One is a collaborative ministry. And, we met with some seminarians the other night because the seminary decided to add a class called Collaborative Ministry. And one of the main focuses of that class is pastors and teachers and principals and the members all collaborating together in ministry together as one. Imagine that. And they said, well, where can we take these seminarians on a field trip to see this in action? Where better than the Oregon Conference? And so they brought them out here, and they went to some of our schools, and then they met with some pastors and myself the other night, and Gail and some of the principals and teachers, and we had a wonderful time together after they had visited our schools and visited some of our churches. And so in some closing remarks that I was asked to do right at the end, kind of a thought came to me, and the thought went kind of like this. When it comes to collaboration, the enemy of collaboration is the ego of individual agendas. The catalyst to collaboration is the humility of shared mission. Isn't that true? That's why it's so important for us to have a very clear mission together, that we're all focusing on a very clear set of initiatives that we're focusing on. How do we engage all generations and people groups? Oregon is becoming, and Portland, Greater Portland in particular, becoming a more and more diverse community. And our churches, some of them, like Sunnyside and Rockwood and some others, are starting to become increasingly diverse as well, incredibly diverse, in fact, with refugee groups and with a growing Hispanic population that's also finding its way into our other congregations, not just our Spanish churches, our Hispanic churches. But you know that when we talk about education, the reality is that these groups of people, they could give everything they had and they wouldn't have enough to be in Adventist education. And so our demographics as a church are changing from where they were at years before. We're going to talk about one of the ways that we are thinking about maybe we can address that together. In just a few minutes, we'll talk about that. But the second initiative is developing healthier people and healthier churches. And Gary Parks was asked to be the Relational Ministries Director, which is a new department. It used to be family life and marriage and those kinds of more traditional approaches to relationships. But we started thinking about it, and we said, you know, if you have a marriage and family thing and you do a big weekend, it's a wonderful weekend, but what happens? What changes, really? How does that change our churches? How do our churches learn better how to know and love and serve each other and work together and have positive relationships? And one of the most discouraging things is when churches are filled with strife and with fighting and complaining and backbiting and murmuring and grumbling, sounding a lot like the children of Israel having left Egypt. So it's nothing new, really, but it's certainly not God's plan. God's plan is for His church to be an entirely different kind of environment. And so we said, how can we begin to focus on helping people discover and learn how to have positive, healthy, Christ-centered relationships? And that's what Gary is going around and spending a number of weeks with different churches at a time and helping them begin to experience healthier relationships as a church. And we're seeing transformation take place. Our churches need to be healthier churches. When our churches are safe places for God to send people, guess what God does? Yes, absolutely. Adds to the numbers daily. He sends people, doesn't He? And when our churches are toxic and they're messy, guess what God does? He says, I am not sending anybody there, because that does not represent the kind of person I am, and I don't want people to get hurt. Why would I send hurting people to a place where they'll get hurt more? I want safe places. So, we're focusing on that. How do we become safer, healthier, more vibrant places that are Christ-filled, Spirit-filled? And that's exciting to see what's starting to happen, and focusing on what does it look like to be a healthy church, a vibrant, growing, dynamic church. Thirdly, serving communities compassionately, impactfully. We want to look more intentionally about what does it look like. We've been so good at being light as Seventh-day Adventists, but we want to be better at also being salt. You know, the ministry of healing quote about getting out there and mingling. You know, it's in the mingling that the salt flavors and changes and transforms the food that it touches. And God wants us to be more active in our communities, more engaged within our communities and the areas that He's placed us. That doesn't mean becoming more like those communities. It just means being available to serve and impact those communities with the presence of Christ through our service. And fourthly, expanding the impact of Adventist Christian education. How do we expand the impact of this? You know, we could focus only on expanding enrollment, couldn't we, Gail? That'd be easy. That's easier measurable, really. But the truth is, to some extent, we can't fully control enrollment numbers, because the truth is that population goes through these ebbs and flows in terms of peaks and valleys of age groups that come through. The boomers were the biggest age group that had ever filled North America. Then came along the Gen Xers after the boomers, and the Gen X generation, they were almost half the size of the boomer generation. Then came along the millennial generation, which is bigger than the boomer generation. After them is coming the Generation Z, is what they're called. And so we want to, yes, be aware of how we can reach these and get them into our schools, but at the same time, we really care about impact. How is Seventh-day Adventist education going to positively impact every student who's a part of our educational family, so that they are getting to know, love, serve Jesus, and share Jesus? Because we've done a great job of getting our kids into school over the course of our history, but look how many of them are not in our churches today. It's about impact, and impacting as many as we can. But in impacting as many as we can, we still do have to have enrollment. And so one of the things we're going to share in just a little bit is how do we, this scholarship money that Gail was talking about, that donors have been helping with, and that has been such a generosity among members, some of that we have found out may be changing in the next couple of years. And so how do we maybe at least partly make up for that as a family? And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. The fifth thing is increasing Oregon Conference membership by sharing Jesus and His message and planting new churches. Jesus told the parable of the wineskins. Old wineskins and new wineskins. Old wineskins for old wine, new wineskins for new wine, he said. He said, if you put the new wineskin into the old wineskins, what happens? It splits, it divides, it leaks, it's a mess. And yet, he didn't say there shouldn't be new wine. He only said you shouldn't put it into old wineskins. He said you need new wineskins for the new wine. This comes down to the issue of church planting. Church vitalization or revitalization on the part of our old wineskin churches, our existing churches, in other words, and new wineskins or new church plants, baby plants. If you want to use a family analogy, we've got the grandparents in the family, but we also need new babies in the family. And you need family spreading across intergenerationally. And so we need to be focusing on all aspects of the life and the vitality of God's church. going forward. So we're going to be focusing on some church planting. We're looking forward to some of our churches laboring together and creating cores of people who have a missionary mindset to start a new work, to plant something new, to birth brand new babies. Because I don't know if you've noticed, those of you who drive around the Portland area, but the roads have gotten really filled in the last 3 years. In fact, there was a period of time where you could notice a marked difference every month in the number of people commuting with you on the roads. In my area where I live, over in Tigard, there are all kinds of new areas of expansion and new housing developments. I know the same is true out here in Happy Valley as well. New housing everywhere. People are moving into this area like crazy. Well, we need to also be positioning ourselves to be reaching these people, to be a place for these people to come and be part of God's church. In addition to continuing to reach out to these folks with our existing churches. This isn't an either or. This is both and. Let's all do this together. Let's get this thing done and go home. And so these are our 5 initiatives for the next 4 years. Yeah, these are not what I'm wanting to look at this point. But so these are our initiatives for the next 5 years. Now, as we think about those initiatives, we think, well, you know, if you look at our tithe return is strong. Everybody's being many people are being very faithful. God is really blessing the Oregon Conference. But it's fairly static. We just kind of barely bump up and kind of just are barely keeping up with increase of expenses. So what are some additional ways that we can be good stewards of what God has provided for us and do more ministry in our churches and schools across this conference and in the greater Portland area to impact our world for God? And some conversations started happening about, maybe 9 months, 10 months ago. Some Adventist business people came and talked to us about some ideas that were tied to some stuff that they had helped us do before. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that after we share this video with you.
This ground has been in the Adventist family for almost 90 years. In 1929, the Adventist community had a decision to make. Do we attempt to purchase the property in Gladstone, Oregon, known as Gladstone Park? Prayerfully, they deliberated until they felt that God was leading them forward. Through the generosity of members and friends alike, the campground was purchased and prepared for its first camp meeting. In August of 1930, this site was dedicated to be used by God's church for His glory. By 1936, 6,000 people, that's the entire membership of the conference at that time, was gathering each summer for the event that we've come to know and love as camp meeting. But their vision went far beyond camp meeting. They envisioned a beautiful park that would serve as host to the work of God year-round. They imagined summer camps and community programs, even a health clinic and a sanitarium that would serve the needs of the entire surrounding area. Church members could even lease a small tract where they could build a little vacation cabin on the property. One thing was certain: our predecessors desired that this place would be meaningfully used year-round for God's glory. Fast forward to today. Through June and July, this place is bustling. I mean, employees and volunteers alike dot the campus, and they prepare Gladstone Park for the rich blessing that is camping. But how about the rest of the year? People are always coming and going from the Adventist Book Center. The conference office and the Holden Center are used regularly to support the ministry of our conference churches and schools. But the rest lays dormant, awaiting a new summer when it will be utilized again. In the next decade, nearly 78 million people will move into retirement in the United States. What if Gladstone Park could help meet the needs of retired Adventists and the community in the decades to come? Imagine our own Happy Valley as a 55-plus RV park that people can come and swing by and stay in and enjoy all year round, the kind of environs that we have come to love. Imagine expanding the vision of our Somerset concept, using a parcel of land to build a memory care center where we can care for seniors through the end of their life journey. Imagine a 55-plus independent living apartment complex where people could come to enjoy the Gladstone Park environment in their backyard. Imagine a permanent roof over this main pavilion so that it can become a place where all through the summer we can host concerts and other kinds of events, perhaps even a Bible seminar, and we can be the host for our community to come together and get to know the Adventist church better. Imagine the possibilities if we would come together to more fully utilize the space that God has graciously given us these 90 years. Not only would Gladstone Park provide a needed service to an aging generation, it would also provide revenue to continue and expand the work of the Oregon Adventist churches and schools throughout our entire territory. For over 130 years, God has blessed Oregon Adventists with the vision and the resources to inspire the people of Oregon and Southwest Washington with the message of the everlasting gospel. For over 130 years, God has guided and provided, and no doubt He'll continue to do so. All of these ideas that I've just shared are things that we've been talking and thinking about, and even some developers and potential Adventist owners have come alongside and said, hey, what about this and what if that? And so we've been doing some initial exploring, but really now, before we go any further with any kind of direction, it's time for us as an Oregon Conference family to have some conversation together, to see what we sense to be God's leading and direction in how we can best use this amazing asset beyond just doing camp meeting to doing other ministries that will impact our community. It's really all about Jesus. How we can better be knowing Jesus and others, loving Jesus and others, serving Jesus and others, and sharing Jesus with others, maximizing this asset that God has given to His church.
So that's just an introduction. Really, it's just a conversation that's started to say, how can we be the best possible stewards of this blessing God's given us? How can this further bless beyond what we do for camp meeting? How can this bless our membership and our community even more? And so the reason that the idea of senior care, because of the growing senior population over the next decade, 15, 20 years, that's going to be moving into housing like this, among our membership and among the community, in addition to that, it offers us more opportunities for ministry to them as that happens. But beyond that, it's something that can also provide some resources to the ministries of our schools and our churches across the conference. It can help with our Every Child Deserves Christ funding for our student scholarships. It can help with other education needs. It can help with our church planting and outreach. It can help with local church needs. And so the idea for this came because about 20 years ago, many of you know this story far better than me. I just know it second, third, fifth hand. But about 20 years ago, we almost lost Gladstone Park. We almost sold it as a conference. The city didn't want us to have it because it didn't gain them any revenue. Nonprofit properties like that are useless to a city. And the conference couldn't afford it anymore. The infrastructure of the campground, we weren't able to afford to keep up. And so there was almost a decision to sell it. In fact, some of you will remember that camp meeting was actually canceled or postponed or moved to just a weekend somewhere else. And so along came some Adventist business people who had worked within the senior care industry and said, what about this? We would like to help the church. We believe in the mission of the church. We don't want to see you lose Gladstone. So what if you were simply to provide the plot of land for the Somerset Assisted Care Living Lodge, an independent lodge, and what if we gave you in return for that 50% interest in that? So that 50%, half of the profit of that came back to you as a church, as a conference, for Gladstone. Well, I can tell you folks, that is the reason we still have Gladstone Park. It was because of that vision, and because leadership in that day and members across this conference said, you know, let's do it. It's serving members, it's serving the community, it's doing ministry, and it's a way that we can have resources to do the other ministries we do on this campground. Well, that's really the same principle that has come along this time, only expanding on it and having a full range of senior care that begins with RVers who come and go, and we block out the couple of weeks before camp meeting and the couple of weeks after camp meeting and through camp meeting, and so we have it for camp meeting. But the rest of the year, it's something that can be developed and can be used. What about an apartment, senior 55 plus apartment complex, complete independent living, but with different amenities that can serve our members and the community as they come into a place where they're wanting to be in that kind of setting? What about shifting Somerset eventually, after we have the apartments, more toward more toward assisted living, all of it, both lodges, and what about when somebody needs memory care, us having a memory care center right there? And so we're looking at just along the top of the property that, you know, kind of in keeping with where Somerset is and whatnot, right along that Webster Street, and then the memory care right below the hill of Somerset, above the pond. You know, it's areas that would have minimal impact on what we do for camp meeting. They would impact it some, but minimally. And those are only really 5-6 days a year that affects us anyway. What if all year long we could have something that could serve the ministries of this conference more and make better use of the asset that God has given us as stewards? We want to throw that out to you now. Any questions you have, comments? Yes?
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, the property along Webster Road,
Yep, just keep trying, they'll get it.
okay. The property along Webster Road entails J parking, upper level of J parking, down through a little bit of the midsection of J parking. On the other side is Somerset, the upper Webster Road section of M section, which is the RV campers, the truck campers, and the pull-along trailer campers. So if I'm hearing you correctly, that's all going to go away, and these structures are going to be in part of that area.
The upper portion of M, you're correct, and the overflow parking right beneath the hill. I don't know about letters. The overflow parking right beneath the hill below Somerset. above the pond there. It's the furthest back against the hill, overflow parking, that we use for about 5 hours on Sabbaths once a year. Okay?
So that section you're calling overflow parking, we do use it a lot on Friday nights and Sabbaths. It is vacant a bit during the week on there, but it's a big but. I've been going to Gladstone Campground as a volunteer for about 32 years. And I like your ideas. I see the merit in your ideas. I see where it can help us financially. I have no argument against any of that. But I'm going to voice concerns as to what is this going to do to our camp meeting, what's the word I want? Attitude, because I know I was a part of the group that was very unhappy when we almost sold Gladstone. Mm-hmm. And it was very hard to miss that camp meeting year. It was very hard to go for that weekend. Yeah. It was a circus.
Yeah, for sure.
And I am F section camp host, and I also help in I section and in the other tent section on the other side of the pond. Mm-hmm. So Mother Hen here has a huge concern, and that's my campers' camp meeting home for probably 250 tent campers. Mm-hmm. So I like your idea. Tell me more. Convince me to give up part of this property. And I also want to challenge you to improve our tent camping sections.
Okay. Well, part of the studying that has to be done is how do we use the campground for camp meetings more efficiently if we are to take some of the current campground and it not be available any longer for that. Now, it's not the big central parts of the campground, but still, one of the reasons we're trying to stay up toward Webster Road is we'd really like to keep traffic flow to anything we would have all be off of Webster and all be pushed to the edge of the campground so that we can maintain and retain the main body of the campground and the integrity of that. Yes?
I guess my concerns or my questions have to do with further down the line. My mother stayed for several years at Cherrywood Village in the assisted living and needed a memory care unit, which of course they didn't have. And it took her to another place, but when they built it, we went back there to check it out. Now, I don't know exactly what the arrangement is, and I understand that the church or the conference owns the land and somebody else manages Cherrywood and whatever. Yeah. And sometimes I wonder when that happens how much of it we let go of our mission because it's somebody else's mission, not ours, and that would be a concern. Because she is now in another religious affiliated organization because when she received an inheritance, and when that money runs out, they will accept her Medicaid for however long she lives. This particular Cherrywood would not. So my question is, do we show the compassion and do we make those kinds of decisions in terms of this kind of facility?
And that's important to set up those protocols, and we would certainly have the ability to have a strong voice at the table in setting those protocols. We're not really, I'm just going to be honest with you, I don't think conferences do a great job of operating businesses. So we're not interested in operating businesses. We will have management teams that work in senior care that would do that, just as has been the case all along with Somerset. But those are important parts of the process, and I agree with you that compassion is so important in the senior care. Yeah.
Where is a proposal for financing a future development?
Okay, excellent question. So the arrangement we had at Somerset was Adventist developers and senior care business persons came along and said, we'll cover all the cost. You just provide the plot of land and we'll make you 50% partners. It was a pretty good deal, frankly. It was a really good deal. It has returned itself on us many, many times over compared to what just the land was worth, in fact. And so that has really served as the model that we're interested in, and we wouldn't even consider it unless somebody else were coming along and saying, we're going to do that, so that we're not bearing the risk and we're not bearing the brunt of any kind of debt or cost. The Somerset's going to become an even bigger blessing to our conference in the years ahead, because the original mortgage on that will mature in a few short years, and then the returns are going to be even better because you won't have the huge mortgage coming out of that. So that's going to be a blessing as well. Yes.
I have a question about the city of Gladstone, because they have created some problems for us in the past. And so I was wondering, I know that they get their water from us, and there's a few other things that I would hate for us to get all set up to go ahead with all of this, and then Gladstone enter in and make a problem. So are you dealing with them, talking with them? Great insight. Cities and counties can be a challenge at times whenever you're doing anything. What is always the biggest challenge is when you are nonprofit and they're going to get nothing from what you're wanting to do. They love Somerset. It serves the community, and it also generates revenue. It is part of as a conference, our only corporation that is a for-profit corporation that is separate from our nonprofits. And it's because it is a for-profit operation. It generates revenue. And so anything else we would do that would be for-profit revenue generating would be coming through that corporation or affiliated with that corporation. Gladstone, I think, from what I'm hearing, will be happy to have more for-profit development on that property, because it generates tax revenue for the city, which helps them with their schools and with their roads and with their operations, their fire departments, etc., police departments. And so, which are all benefits to us, those infrastructure issues. There have been initial conversations with their planning department and their engineering department with some potential Adventist partners that have been helping to explore that just very initially. The whole reason we're needing to have these conversations is because our potential Adventist partners on some of these different projects have said to us, okay, we've done as much talking as we can do. We really don't know any more right now, and what we know is very little. So to know more, we have to spend money. And when they say we, they mean them. And so what they're saying is, we just want to have a good general sense from the conference membership that hey, we like the idea. Go ahead and go spend your money, and find out if this is something that can work and that can be a blessing. And so that's the stage we're at. And part of that piece is engineering, it's water flow, it's water catchment situations, it's infrastructure issues, it's city planning issues regarding streets and roads and all of that sort of thing, and And so that's the next step, really. And so that before we could really go to the next step, we really needed to come here. But the initial indications are they would be happy to see this sort of a thing enhancing the Gladstone community. Yeah. Yes?
You've explained quite well the business end of it, but how will the ministry of the church be carried out? Because from
Good.
what I understand at Somerset, you could not tell that that has anything to do with the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Oh, where's the pastor of Gladstone Park and the members of Gladstone Park? There are ministries that happen over at Somerset that are an extension of our church that's right there. And there are ministries within Somerset that happen. I think, though, you bring up an excellent point, and that is that there's room for improving intentionality. And that's something that we need to be very intentional about, setting up the protocols that would be important to us on the front end of any arrangements. Yeah, great insight. Appreciate that. We're writing down all of these things. So get her name, Gail, if you could. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay,
So,
somebody
hi,
else?
yes. So my sister and I are third-generation camp meeting goers. We're also
awesome.
campers with Carol, so we have a passion about camp meeting. Anyway, so it seems like we're talking at the beginning about spirituality and relationship and all the things that we wanted to do from a spiritual nature, but then when you get right down to it, you're talking money, 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 finance, finance, finance. Now, I'm a nurse and have an MBA, so there's some experience that we have and some interesting thoughts that were going through all of our heads. And so one of the main ones is, if you do end up doing this, does that change your nonprofit status to a for-profit status?
Okay, I hear several questions in there.
Sure.
So the first is, everything we do is about knowing, loving, serving, and sharing Jesus, and knowing and loving and serving and sharing others. Providing senior care is a way to do that. It's not the only way, but it's certainly a very meaningful way, both to families of seniors and to seniors themselves. And so that is a very meaningful way to go about ministering to our members and to the community, to that demographic and the families. In addition to that, it is something that does happen to provide a way to have some additional financial means to help us do additional ministry across our conference and churches, to have more appropriations that can help churches and schools, and to do things on a conference-wide level as well. And so it really kind of provides a whole expanse of opportunity, really, both on the spiritual, relational, and financial level. And there are very few things that we could do that would really help us accomplish that and maximize our stewardship in that way. And we just came off a whole quarter studying stewardship in Sabbath school. And so the timing is actually pretty good. The financial part, segueing into that from there, is that we do, as I said, have one corporation that is a for-profit corporation. We have 7 nonprofit corporations. It's a conference. We are unique in that. Most conferences have 2 corporations, their conference corporation and their association corporation that holds assets, and the operations side, which is the conference. We have 7 because we have wanted to, because of the litigious nature of the state of Oregon, because of a lack of a statute of limitations on past issues that may have happened even 40, 50 years ago in schools and churches. Because of this kind of climate we're in, we took a unique step a number of years ago to create corporations for each of the different aspects of our conference, the holdings, the assets. So we have our schools in one corporation, that's nonprofit. We have our church buildings in another corporation, that's nonprofit. Everything else is nonprofit except the one that receives the revenue for Somerset. And so that would remain separate. Taxes get paid out of that, and rightfully so, because we're good citizens, and Jesus said, render unto Trump what is Trump's.
So
Oh, wait, is
Yeah.
that what Jesus said?
Well,
No,
something
Jesus
similar.
said the last trump shall sound.
If you do decide to do elder care, because we did grow up with our parents having an Alzheimer's care, you'd have to make sure that you talk to the right people about the requirements for the elder care piece, and like state surveys and all that kind of bit.
Yeah, one of the partners we're talking to actually has a nationwide chain of memory care facilities. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. Right up here. Salmon-colored blazer. Isn't that amazing? I knew what that color is. I have 3 women in my family.
Well, this is just kind of a thought following up with the previous comment in terms of we have heard about service, and now it seems to be financial. And it seems to me that you're saying we'll provide a service to the community, but it's a service that any for-profit business could provide as well. So what makes us different about that? And it seems like there's still a lot of people who could use those services who we have priced out of the market because we need to make a profit.
Okay, thank you. And that's always one of the challenges in any kind of healthcare endeavor. It's one of the challenges with Adventist Medical Center, and yet you will hear incredible testimonials from across this region and across the state and southern Washington and beyond about the impact and blessing of Adventist health in people's lives. And so there's always that tension that exists. Pastor Ballard.
Yes. I am a lover of camp meeting and have been there for, I guess now, probably 40 years. It's kind of a scary thought. And one of the things that it is a concern, and that is that we don't infringe upon, as we are moving for this thing, infringe upon too much of what we're trying to do, because I've watched through the years as we have shrunk the parking, the camping, and all those different things. And just want to keep in mind that if our goal is and intentions are that our conference grow, and I would like to hope and anticipate camping would grow too, I don't want to box us in so much that we actually literally cannot grow. We cannot even serve what we already have. That's just a thought there. But on the other side of it, and that's getting away from just the retirement and the mental places there that we were talking about up along the street there. The thing that I was excited about that you had talked about, and I would love to see, is something that's been on my heart for years, and that is, you were talking about like the main pavilion having a permanent thing that concerts and things can go, that we could serve the community, that we could get people from the community into the campgrounds, both Adventist and non-Adventist, and to be able to do that. And I'm actually thrilled about that idea that we could be using that. I love the idea of the campers being able to come and actually use this park through the year. I think it's a great revenue, but it's more of we're getting people through the campgrounds here, desensitizing them to anything that might be as barriers against us as Adventists in a community, but also familiarizing themselves with what goes on. I could see a great advantage of ministries that we could be advertising and doing things that when people come through, they look and say, hey, maybe I want to be here for that when it comes, because they must be doing something here. And I love the idea of that. But I would also like to encourage, years ago, before the conference moved on to the campgrounds here, and the Holden Center was built, but the conference office was not, and that underneath the cafeteria was absolved in the aspect of storage and everything else. Before that time, there was a time when it was used a lot more as a retreat center, a place where Pathfinder groups would come in and they would do retreats, and there were elders groups and other things. I would like that also be an exploration of actually building a facility where retreats could be more easily taken care of through the winter. It's hard, campers are great if you have campers, but a lot of times if you have a school group, you want to come in and do a retreat, they're not going to be bringing motorhomes in. Before we had a place for rooms where people could be in and they would be able to use that. Just maybe some thoughts that direction where we could turn the entire campgrounds literally into retreat centers. If you had concerts, you could even rent those things out. And yes, it would be a moneymaker, but it also would open up the door for retreats on weekends and things. Just a
Okay,
thought.
thank you. Those all been recorded. Good. Right here.
I've been thinking, we're talking about memory care, elder care. What about young people care?
It's come up at every place we've gone to, and so yeah, we've been taking down ideas on that.
I understand that there's a lot of concerns about legal concerns about child care, but that's part of what we're here for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, get my mouth in gear with my brain. What if we had day camps? When my daughter was little, we were in Walla Walla, and she was able to go to a day camp. She got to go to junior camp too, but during the summer, she got to have a whole day away from Mom. And she got to have so much fun. She thought about that. She remembered it for years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We could do the same thing there.
Yeah.
Like
sure.
I said, there's a lot of legal things that you'd have to work out. But I guess I'm just a child carer.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Great ideas, and we've got those down. That's excellent. And each of the different places we've been at has raised that same issue, and we've concern, and interest, and we have been writing that down as we've been going along. And the truth is, about 4 years ago, when Pastor Reimke was here as president, he and I were talking with some Adventist owners who were interested in, at the time, exploring something for youth there on the campground as well. And so, who knows? Maybe something can happen out of that type of thing as well. Yeah. Yes, up at the top there. You have the microphone. They'll bring the mic to you.
Yes, I have a question. I understand that there is a senior facility on the same campus property as PAA. Mm-hmm. Is this a similar business and mission model that you're using in Gladstone?
I can tell you that they're operated by a different group than this would be operated by. So I can't speak to what the specific model is that they are operating under. I actually don't know. So I will plead ignorance on that.
Approach where you get a portion.
Pardon me?
That's not an approach where you get a portion of the profit?
No, that's not an Oregon Conference situation. No. No, that's separate from us completely.
My name is Kirk Freimeyer from Lentz Church. I would like to change the topic a little bit, if that's all right.
Okay, before you do, Kirk, I want to make sure that there aren't others wanting to speak to the topic we've been talking to before we go. I think right here, our sister wanted to share something.
There are two of us sitting here who are living at Somerset right now.
And
so I can tell you that somebody raised the question of what advantage did we have. We have a Sabbath school and a prayer meeting every week.
Amen.
And we do work with the Gladstone Church. Our Sabbath school people are elected by the nominating committee of the church. In addition to that, we have maybe at least a 30% of the people living there are Adventists.
Amen.
Gives us a wonderful opportunity to mix and mingle with a lot of other people. And I think there's a real advantage to it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Appreciate that. So glad you're there. Okay, are we done talking about that item? Okay, right here.
I'm never done talking about the campground. With all of these projected interests and changes that are going on, what is that going to do to our 2 faithful maintenance workers on the campground that are literally, they go 24/7 a lot during the year, especially at camp meeting?
One of the spouses is appreciating that. Write that down, Gail. Good input. Whenever you expand operation, you have to expand staff. That's just the way it goes. But taking care of the campground proper is money out of the pocket without any way to pay for it beyond generating some additional funds. And so some of what we're talking about would assist us with helping to provide adequate care for the grounds. Yes. Thank you. It's an excellent point. Appreciate that. And I just want to stop and say, we love Kevin and Matt, and they do an amazing job at Gladstone. Amazing job. Yes?
I just wanted to ask, as people leave here, they may go home and pray about some of the things that you've presented this evening. Mm-hmm. What would be an opportunity for the constituents to provide feedback outside of the town hall meeting if they had ideas or thoughts? And
sure.
How do you plan to communicate with the rest of the Oregon constituents as you progress through these steps?
Excellent. So we will find a way to be able to continue to open up a channel, probably either via telephone or online, either of those options, to be able to continue to have dialogue with us about that, ask questions, share concerns. Yeah. Okay. What's your general mood on this?
Tell me more.
Okay. Okay. Tell me more and move forward. Okay? We can't tell you more till we move forward. That's actually why we're here. So if you don't say move forward to the next level, tell the potential partners to spend some of their money, we can't tell you anymore. There's really no more we can tell you than what we've told you, because we've gone as far as any of those conversations can go at this point.
Don't substitute mission for profit.
Amen. I agree. And don't necessarily avoid profit that's connected to mission. Okay. Did she say something? Were you wanting to say something to complete?
Valid.
Okay. Yes, you get the last word.
What is the process going forward? What would be the process going forward? Is this going to take a constituency meeting of the conference to move forward along with anything else, or are we going to take it in stages as we get more information? Do we then turn around and have another constituency, or however it moves forward, or is this going to be handled by the executive committee, or?
So I imagine that what will happen next is we will, since we have gotten in some places very enthusiastic, go forward. In some places, well, we like the idea, we'll need more information. And in some places, give me more information. Since that is the spectrum of what we've gotten, but nowhere have we heard, no, don't do this. We will probably, the next step will be we'll go to our executive committee, which we normally would have done before town halls, but I missed it because I got sick and had a surgery on the day of executive committee, and we weren't able to present it. And so we will do that in about a week and a half. And so I apologize to any executive committee members who are here that I was in the hospital on the day of executive committee. The executive committee will relate to this. They'll probably help make a final decision about, do we continue the conversation with donors and potential Adventist partners, and if that decision is to do that, then we will engage those persons to go to the next step of gathering more information, at which point we will probably take the step to go back to the executive committee and share that information. And then if they say, yes, we like what we're seeing, we like what we're hearing, we will come to town halls again, rather than a constituency session, at least as our first step, because a constituency session costs the Oregon Conference a lot of money, whereas us going around and doing town halls involves potentially more people if the people come out, which is not our fault, and engages more people in the conversation at much lower cost to the Oregon Conference, to the members of the Oregon Conference. And of course, the whole idea is to try to minimize cost in this whole process to the Oregon Conference, to our membership. And so that would probably be the process. If we got a very strong sense of, yes, we like what this is looking like, let's move forward from town halls, we'd go back to executive committee with that. They may decide, okay, it looks like there's a strong enough support, let's go forward. If it's mediocre and we want more information, then we might say, okay, we're going to call a constituency session, a special session, and we'll spend the money and we'll bring everybody in, and we will have a session where a majority get to vote on what we do, of delegates sent by churches, which means that not as many people can have input in that process. It's only the delegates that would be sent, just like with a constituency session. Okay? We need to move on because we are now at 8:28, and you can, Pastor Ballard, share with Gail whatever your input is, if you wouldn't mind. We need to actually kind of close off the meeting, given the time that we're at. Pastor, you have
it's actually 9:28.
Yes, did I say 8:28? Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you for the clarification. 9:28, and we had kind of planned that we would be done at 9. So we want to be courteous to you and close that off. That was the main point of discussion, along with the other reports that the bylaws now require that we bring to you every year, those reports that you heard earlier as well. Thank you so much for coming out tonight, and we appreciate it. Yes, sir?
You haven't given us that chance.
Okay, well, when you say we, you mean who?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, from a particular church?
From Lance Church.
Okay, if it's regarding a matter with your particular church and a concern you have, that's something that we need to relate to you separately
to get to
with.
You. I called you personally, but you didn't return my call. And I asked you to write or whatever, and you still haven't returned it.